It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end, and so that was that was by design for us to get back to.
It was supposed to be a routine, tightly controlled evaluation camp in Durham, North Carolina. The schedule was locked, the roster confirmed, and the outside world was held at arm's length, reporters waiting patiently for approved quotes and carefully managed headlines. But sometime after 2 a.m. on Saturday, a strange detail began to circulate. The lights were still burning inside the facility, and senior Team USA decision-makers were pulled into a meeting that never appeared on any agenda. Why? Because something unfolded on that court that violated the plan. According to multiple people in the gym, Caitlin Clark didn't simply rejoin the national program. She shattered its internal order in real time. The conversations that followed weren't about drills, rotations, or minor adjustments. They were about containment. They were about what happens when a system built on patience, hierarchy, and tradition collides with a player unwilling to understand why the single practice session detonated inside USA Basketball headquarters. You have to rewind the story beyond the box scores and highlight reels and into the politics that have governed the program for decades. This wasn't just about one player getting hot in a scrimmage. It was about a structure that had grown comfortable deciding who mattered and when. The 2024 Olympic decision was not an accident. It was a message. The program believed it could win without Caitlin Clark, and more importantly, it believed that winning would validate the philosophy that no individual, no matter how popular, could be allowed to disrupt the hierarchy. When Team USA secured gold in Paris, that belief hardened. Internally, it became proof. Proof that patience was mandatory. Proof that seniority still ruled. Proof that the machine worked just fine without bending to outside pressure. For the next year, that position shaped every conversation around Clark. She was praised, but always with conditions. Elite shooter, but not a system player. Marketable, but defensively suspect. Transformational, but unfinished. The subtext was clear. She would be welcomed eventually, on their timeline, under their terms. Clark heard all of it. She read it. She absorbed it. And then she made a decision that confused almost everyone watching. She stopped talking. No interviews. No public frustration. No cryptic social media posts. She didn't campaign. She didn't complain. Instead, she opted out of noise entirely. When January 2025 arrived and the new 3v3 league came calling with a massive paycheck and global exposure, Clark said no. That choice raised eyebrows across the sport. From the outside, it looked like a missed opportunity. From the inside, it was a declaration. She wasn't interested in visibility. She was interested in leverage. She spent that winter rebuilding her body, addressing the physical toll of her college workload and refining the parts of her game critics loved to question. Strength. Conditioning. Reads. Efficiency. By the time the WNBA season tipped off, she looked different. Not just sharper, but heavier in the right ways. Stronger through contact. More patient without being passive. That evolution showed up immediately. The Indiana Fever didn't just improve. They transformed. Clark's scoring became more surgical. Her passing more punishing. Defenses that once survived by forcing the ball out of her hands found themselves punished for the decision. The playoff run that followed wasn't a fluke. It was a message written in possessions. By the time the season ended, the conversation around her had shifted, even if the establishment wasn't ready to admit it publicly. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was arriving. So when the December evaluation camp in Durham was announced, the tone felt different. Officially, it was routine. Closed doors. Controlled environment. No distractions. Unofficially, it was a test. Could Clark be folded back into the machine without changing it? Could she be absorbed instead of accommodated? The answer, the program believed, would be yes. That confidence showed itself the moment players were issued their gear. Jersey numbers matter at this level. They are currency. They are status. When Clark reached her locker and saw number 17 instead of 22, the message didn't need explanation. This was not her team. Not yet. Maybe not ever. To the public, it would mean nothing. Internally, it was a reminder. Fit in. Fall in line. Earn it again. People in the room noticed what happened next. No reaction. No protest. No visible emotion. She took the jersey, pulled it over her head, and tied her shoes. But something changed. The lightness disappeared. The warmth evaporated. What replaced it was focus sharpened into something colder. Warm-ups began like any other national team session. Structured. Repetitive. Controlled. But the atmosphere was different. The building was heavy with unspoken tension. Everyone knew why they were there. The veterans knew this was their house. The younger players knew they were being evaluated not just on performance, but on obedience. And Clark? Clark moved through the drills like someone counting down to something. Watching. Waiting. The presence of program royalty only amplified the moment. Sue Bird on the sideline, observing, cataloging, saying little. Diana Taurasi in uniform, a living symbol of continuity and control. Whether she was there to inspire or intimidate hardly mattered. Her presence alone reinforced the message. This is how it has always been done. When the teams were finally split for the scrimmage, the intent was unmistakable. Experience versus potential. Order versus disruption. It was supposed to be instructional. A reminder of how quickly youth gets humbled at this level. For years, this script had worked flawlessly. The veterans set the tone physically. The younger players adjust or retreat. The system survives. What no one accounted for was what happens when the player everyone tried to manage decided she wasn't there to be managed anymore. The scrimmage opened exactly as planned. Physical defense. Deliberate pace. Bodies in the paint. The veterans imposed themselves early, scoring through contact and communicating loudly on defense. This was familiar territory. The kind of basketball Team USA has mastered for generations. Each possession was meant to reinforce the lesson: slow down, respect the system, understand where you fit. When the veterans converted a tough basket inside midway through the second quarter, the energy shifted in their favor. Words were exchanged. Shoulders bumped. The defense set itself, ready to absorb whatever came next. What came next wasn't in the playbook. Clark took the inbound and moved with purpose. Not rushed. Not reckless. Just decisive. She crossed half court quickly, without glancing toward the sideline. No signal. No call. The defender assigned to her, one of the best perimeter stoppers in the program, hesitated for a fraction of a second, honoring the drive. That hesitation was all Clark needed. She rose from well beyond the arc, a distance the staff had spent years discouraging. The shot was pure. The net snapped. The gym went quiet before anyone could reset emotionally. The next possession unfolded. The veterans tried to answer inside again, leaning on what had always worked. Clark read it instantly. She jumped the lane, took the ball cleanly, and exploded upcourt. Two defenders chased, angling to cut her off. This was textbook. Force her to give it up. Make the right play. Clark stopped abruptly at the three-point line. The defenders flew past. Another shot. Another make. The silence deepened. The third possession was born from frustration. The veterans abandoned subtlety and went straight to pressure. A hard trap just past half court, designed to force the ball out of her hands. For years, this tactic had neutralized elite scorers. Clark split it with a behind-the-back dribble that left both defenders colliding. She stepped back, set her feet, and launched from the logo. 3 shots. 3 makes. 37 seconds. 9 points. No celebration followed. No flexing. No reaction at all. Clark simply turned and ran back on defense. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't emotion. This was inevitability. The system that had defined USA basketball suddenly looked outdated, exposed by spacing and decisiveness it wasn't built to handle. The hierarchy didn't just bend. It cracked. Witnesses described the moment as eerie. Enclosed runs, noise is constant. Trash talk. Bench reactions. Coaches barking. This time, there was nothing. Just shoes squeaking and the ball bouncing. Sue Bird didn't move. She didn't clap. She leaned toward an assistant and spoke quietly. 4 words that traveled fast through the building. She broke everything. Not the defense. Not the scrimmage. The assumptions. Diana Taurasi's response was even more telling. Known for meeting challenges head-on, she didn't demand the ball. She didn't call for a reset. She walked to the bench, signaled for a substitution, and sat down. Eyes forward. Expression unreadable. For someone who had defined eras, the realization was unavoidable. This wasn't a transition being negotiated. It was being taken. The scrimmage continued, but the damage was done. Every possession after carried the weight of those 37 seconds. The younger players watched closely. Not just the shots, but the response. Or lack of one. They saw what happened when the system met something it couldn't control. And they understood what it meant for them. That understanding followed everyone into the locker room. Conversations were muted. Eye contact avoided. The decision to call an emergency meeting wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. What had unfolded couldn't wait for a morning recap. This wasn't about adjustments. It was about survival. Inside the conference room, the tone was tense and unfiltered. Coaches and executives weren't debating rotations. They were confronting a truth they had spent years resisting. Cheryl Reeve's philosophy had always been clear. Structure first. System over stars. Trust built through hierarchy. That approach had delivered medals and continuity. But what happened on the court challenged the foundation itself. Clark wasn't refusing to play within the system. She was exposing its ceiling. The realization was uncomfortable. You can't coach her the same way. You can't slow her down without making the team worse. The analogy surfaced quickly. A high-performance engine being forced to idle. The meeting wasn't about whether Clark was good enough. That question had been answered decisively. It was about whether leadership was willing to adapt or be left behind. There was another factor no one could ignore. The younger players had seen everything. They watched Clark dismantle pressure designed to humble her. They watched the veterans hesitate. If leadership chose to suppress Clark again, the message to the next generation would be unmistakable. Talent would be punished for disruption. Obedience would be valued over excellence. That's how you lose the future. And then there was the business reality. Nike's presence loomed over every decision. The investment wasn't theoretical. Clark wasn't just a player. She was the engine driving viewership, merchandise, and relevance. The numbers from the 2025 WNBA season told the story plainly. Interest followed her. Engagement followed her. The Olympic ratings without her were strong. With her, they would have been historic. Executives understood what was at stake. The jersey decision became symbolic in hindsight. An attempt to minimize that did the opposite. Without the weight of branding, Clark played free. Relentless. Aggressive. The chip on her shoulder wasn't performative. It was surgical. Even a late correction from Reeve on a defensive rotation became a moment of quiet defiance. Clark acknowledged it, then immediately exploited the same weakness on the other end. A response without words. I see more than you think. The emergency meeting ended without resolution, but with clarity. The paradigm had shifted. You don't phase out players like this. You build around them or you get run over. The rumors followed quickly. Roster changes. Veterans reconsidering roles. Questions about leadership timelines. The 2026 World Cup wasn't theoretical anymore. The rest of the world was catching up. France, Australia, Germany. They wouldn't wait for USA Basketball to resolve internal politics. The final image from the night said more than any meeting could. As players filtered out, a ball boy bypassed legends to approach Clark. He asked for her signature. She signed quietly and walked out. No smile. No celebration. Just purpose. She didn't need to be in the room where decisions were being debated. She had already made hers on the court. What happened in Durham wasn't a warning. It was a transfer of power. The jersey might have read 17, but everyone knew the truth. The attempt to humble her unleashed something far more dangerous. The era didn't end with an announcement. It ended with silence, broken only by the sound of the net. The emergency is no longer theoretical. The tension is no longer hidden, and the Caitlin Clark era is no longer approaching. It is here, whether the program is prepared for it or not. But one small moment from that night in Durham reveals more than any leaked meeting notes ever could. As practice ended and bodies dragged toward the exit, a young staffer waited near the tunnel holding a marker and a pair of worn sneakers. He ignored the champions, the legends, the banners walking past him. He went straight to the player wearing 17. Clark stopped. She signed. She handed the shoes back without a word. No grin. No acknowledgement of what she had just done to the hierarchy of the sport. She slung her bag over her shoulder and walked out, passing the room where coaches were still trying to solve a problem she had already answered. That image tells fans everything they need to know. Forget the numbers. Forget the politics. Forget the past decisions that tried to slow this moment down. What is coming next is not a debate. It is an evolution. Team USA will be forced to change because the game has already changed. What felt like panic inside those walls was clarity everywhere else. This was the moment the old rules stopped applying. The silence in that gym was not confusion. It was recognition. The future didn't knock. It pulled up from deep, hit nothing but net, and kept walking forward. The shift is permanent, the message unmistakable, and the era ahead will not wait for permission anymore from anyone in charge today.